Welcome everybody to a meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm David Muller, Secretary Pollock here. Consistent with Governor Baker's rules around COVID, we are having this meeting virtually. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation if you have one. Please do not unmute or mute yourself. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom. The presenters will then call on the participants and unmute their microphones. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Regine Foley via the chat box at rfoley, F-O-L-E-Y, at ctps.org, or call her at 857-702-3704. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Regine Foley of the MPO staff at rfoley, F-O-L-E-Y, at ctps.org, or call her at 857-702-3704. Could you please call the roll, Jonathan?
Yes, sir. MassDOT Chair.
David Muller, I'm here.
Thank you. MassDOT C2.
John Bouchard, Highway Division here.
Thank you. MassDOT Highway Division.
Mass DOT, John Romano here.
Thank you. MBTA.
Good morning, Samantha Silverberg from the MBTA.
Massachusetts Port Authority. Okay. MAPC.
Mark Barassa, MAPC here.
Thank you. MBTA Advisory Board.
Brian Kane, direct from the Advisory Board's Emergency Operations Center at my dining room.
Wonderful. Regional Transportation Advisory Council.
Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council. Happy to be meeting remotely today here.
Great. City of Boston BTD.
Tom Kazza, City of Boston, representing Mayor Martin Walsh.
Great, thank you. City of Boston BPDA.
Jim Fitzgerald with the BPDA representing Mayor Walsh, City of Boston.
Great. At-large City of Everett.
Jay Monty representing Mayor DeMaria in the City of Everett.
Great. At-large City of Newton.
David Kozis, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller in the City of Newton.
Thank you. At-large Town of Arlington.
Daniel Amstutz, Town of Arlington, at-large town, representing Select Board Chair John Hurd.
Great, thank you. At-large Town of Brookline.
Todd Green, representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green, Town of Brookline.
Thank you. Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Joe Curtatone in the Inner Core.
Great. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Austin Scanowitz, Town of Acton, representing the Magic Subregion.
Great, thank you. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Thatcher Keyser, representing Mayor Spicer, Framingham.
Great, thank you. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Wynn, City of Beverly, representing Mayor Cahill and the North Shore Task Force.
Thank you. North Suburban Planning Council, City of Woburn. Okay. South Shore Coalition, Town of Rockland.
Jennifer Constable, Town of Rockland, representing the South Shore Coalition.
Great, thank you. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Medway.
Peter Pelletier, Town of Medway.
Great, thank you. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood, Deposit River Chamber.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the Town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Okay, and I think the Massachusetts Port Authority has now come on board.
Good morning. This is Laura Gilmore with the Massachusetts Port Authority.
Thank you. And I think Ms. Cassidy is on board. I'll go to our ex officio, Federal Highway Administration.
Ken Miller, Federal Highway Administration.
Federal Transit Administration. Thank you. Okay, and North Suburban Planning Council, City of Woburn.
Yes, good morning. Sorry for the late arrival. Tina Cassidy, representing the City of Woburn, Mayor Scott Galvin, and the North Suburban Planning Council.
Wonderful. That calls the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I do not have one today, so we'll go to the executive director's report. And I believe Tegan is having difficulty with her internet, but maybe she can get on. Tegan?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm getting constant threats that my internet is going to disconnect. So I am, although I was planning to take advantage of the shorter agenda to give a longer report about the strategic plan and some other things, I'm going to delay that till the next meeting. And instead, I'm going to let Jonathan give you a few updates about study corridor selection, location selections, and then Kate to give a few outreach updates, if that's okay with you.
Certainly. John?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of announcements regarding UPWP discrete studies. These are the studies that you as the MPO will discuss and approve each year as part of the MPO process, and how we use available federal planning dollars to advance goals in the MPO region. The board has long been fond of corridor studies that the MPO staff have been able to carry out in support of municipalities who may in the future look for capital money from the MPO. So if you approve them annually and every year, the staff work to identify the best locations. We have locations to announce for this fiscal year, both of which are significant opportunities for complete street improvements, particularly for people walking and biking. So I'll start with the selection of the FFY 2021 Long Range Transportation Plan Priority Corridor Study location. We used selection criteria, which included safety, congestion, multimodal and regional significance, regional equity, and implementation potential. This year's selected segments along Route 9 in Framingham and Natick were chosen. The corridor has residential, commercial, educational, industrial areas. It also has several transportation equity zones that exceed the threshold of the MPO, including low-income households and carless households. The corridor also has a HSIP eligible crash clusters, two of which are in the top 200 of intersection crash clusters in Massachusetts. Finally, there are significant issues with the infrastructure for people walking and biking, and in coordination with Mass DOT Highway District 3, they've been fielding inquiries about these issues, and MPO staff would focus on these segments where safety and people who bike or walk would benefit the most. Looking further at the FFY 2021 sub-regional priority roadway locations, Plain Street, Grove Street, and Columbian Street in Brookline. These are all part of the old Route 128 corridor and run parallel to Interstate 93 and Route 3. These roadways carry regional and local traffic. There's a strong support from stakeholders, including representatives from Braintree and Mass DOT District 6. The corridor has a crash rate much higher than the state average and a significant number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes. The corridor is important for the subregion's economic development with a mix of land uses, including commercial and multi-unit residential, and a number of ongoing planned developments. It is not a comfortable place for people biking or walking. It is located in an area with a high percentage of seniors and youth. So at this point, I will turn it over to Kate White, who's going to talk about the outreach highlights.
But before we do that, John, let me see if anybody has any questions about the selection of those two corridors.
Okay.
Any questions from the MPO? Seeing none, you're up, Kate.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to give a couple of highlights of recent outreach. MPO staff hosted an MPO 101 orientation session on December 8th. And we're going to be having another MPO 101 for board members on January 7th. We really want board members to attend. And again, it's a great way to get to know staff better and dig into some of the details about the MPO. Some updates on sub-regional coordination. We recently presented at the Southwest Advisory Planning Council and the Three Rivers Interlocal Council sub-regional meetings in the past week to talk about transportation project priorities and study ideas. I really thank the members for such great conversation and input. We also have our next Intercore Committee Transportation meeting on January 13th. We host these meetings in collaboration with MAPC, who hosts the Intercore meetings with a broad range of topics, and we focus on the transportation to facilitate coordination and collaboration among the Intercore communities. We're wrapping up our 2020 outreach. By yesterday, we attended the Blue Hills Regional Coordinating Council meeting to hear more about their community engagement and next steps for their transportation action plan. We also featured these in our recent sub-regional needs assessments where the Blue Hills kind of cover in the coverage areas. We also want to thank everyone who attended What the Truck with Bill Kuttner yesterday afternoon. It was a great conversation with over 30 people attending to learn more about freight issues in the Boston region. Bill discussed the 5 different truck groups modeled or MPO staff used for modeling major issues facing freight in our region and some cool and unusual trucks. So we really thank both Bill and all the attendees for joining us yesterday evening. So with that, I send it back to the chair.
Thanks, Kate. Any questions for Kate? Seeing none. Next item on our agenda is public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment at this time? If so, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function or dial *9. Seeing none, if you have a question during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will call on you. Next item is committee chairs reports. Are there any? Jay Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. We had a committee meeting for the congestion management committee this morning. Very well attended. Thank you, everybody, for making it out. We reviewed the parking ride dashboard presented by Ryan Hicks. Very thorough analysis. Very well done. Thank you, Ryan. We also approved the fiscal year 2021 work plan. So that's all.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions for Jay? Seeing none. Any other committee chair reports? Okay, next item on the agenda is the Regional Transportation Advisory Council report. Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on last Wednesday, Sandy Johnson came to talk with the advisory board to get some ideas for the UPWP. I think we had a very good conversation. He certainly left with a bunch of ideas. I think some of us sent him some additional ideas after the meeting. We also talked with Matt Genova, who gave us the same introduction to the TIP universe and as the MPO got. And we also have started in reviewing the needs assessment from the 2019 LRTP, and the goal is to go through that thoroughly over the next 6 months or so in preparation for the next LRTP. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none, next item is the possible approval of Amendment 1 to the FFY 2021 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. Matt Janello.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Today, I'll discuss Amendment 1 to the federal fiscal years 2021 through 2025 Transportation Improvement Program, which is ready for a final endorsement vote today. So on the slide here is a summary of the contents of Amendment 1. There's also a version of this table posted to the MPO's meeting calendar under today's date for your reference. After a vote by this board at the MPO meeting on November 19th, Amendment 1 was released for a 21-day public review period. During that time, MPO staff received one comment on the amendment submitted by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. This comment requested one new addition to the amendment, which you'll see reflected in the table here. And this addition is a minor adjustment to the MPO funds allocated to the Green Line Extension project in federal fiscal year 2021. As you'll see in this table, just shy of $20,000 has been added to the MPO's funding allocation to GLX. This adjustment is due to a slight discrepancy between the total funding allocated by the MPO to this project and the total funding contribution from the MPO that was approved by a joint committee of the MassDOT board, a joint meeting of the MassDOT board and the MBTA's FMCB in 2017 as part of the final Green Line Extension funding plan. This adjustment erases this minor discrepancy using some of the MPO's unallocated federal fiscal year 2021 funding, which totaled roughly $180,000 prior to this change. That means that this adjustment will not affect the budgets or funding schedules for any other projects funded using MPO dollars. 2021 is the final federal fiscal year of funding for the Green Line Extension. So that means that this adjustment allows the MPO to fully close out its commitment to funding this project. This change can be added into this active amendment because the change in cost is so minor that it does not meet the threshold for a full TIP amendment. Instead, as an administrative modification, this specific change does not need to be released for a 21-day public comment period. In addition to this new adjustment, Amendment 1 includes changes to 3 highway projects, all funded using statewide funding. That means the rest of these changes do not impact any projects directly funded using the MPO's discretionary regional target funds. Beginning with project number 610724, interstate pavement preservation on I-93 and I-495 in Chelmsford, Medford, Somerville, and Stoneham. This project is programmed in federal fiscal year 2021 and saw a cost increase of roughly $2.8 million. As we discussed last time, this is the result of a scope increase in final design that added pavement work on adjacent segments of roadway into this project. Along with this cost increase comes a handful of funding source and schedule changes in the federal fiscal years 2021 through 25 TIP. In federal fiscal year 2021, both the North Washington Street Bridge in Boston and the Route 107 bridge over the Saugus River in Lynn and Saugus saw their programmed amounts in the current TIP come down. For the Route 107 project, further decreases are also included in both federal fiscal years 2022 and 2023. These cost changes in TIP funding are the result of 2 different funding mechanisms. First, for the 2021 portion of the funding for the Route 107 bridge, a portion of this project's cost is being funded using federal fiscal year 2020 redistribution funds. Again, these are funds that typically become available late in the federal fiscal year and are the result of federal highway program offices and other states around the country leaving a portion of their federal highway funding unspent. Every year, MassDOT is usually the recipient of these funds from the Federal Highway Administration, as these funds are redistributed to states that have projects that are ready to go and have the capacity to accept new funds. This additional funding is especially useful in accelerating the funding schedule for projects that have advanced construction timelines over multiple federal fiscal years, which is the case for this project. Again, the funding change shown here is the result of some of the project costs being pulled forward into federal fiscal year 2020. So the decrease shown in the table reflects how this change appears in the fiscal years 2021 through 2025 TIP, which is the time period covered by our current active TIP. This does not reflect a change in the actual cost of the project itself. For the other adjustments shown here, including the 2021 funding for the North Washington Street Bridge and the 2022 and 2023 funding for the Route 107 bridge, these programmed amounts are being reduced in this TIP because a portion of these costs was covered using MassDOT's remaining federal fiscal year 2020 statewide obligation authority. In other words, the remaining funding in federal fiscal year 2020 that was left unallocated to other projects. So again, here the overall project costs themselves are not changing, but rather the amount of funding allocated to them in fiscal years 21 through 25 is being adjusted to reflect the pulling forward of some of those project costs into fiscal 2020. That's all I have on Amendment 1. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair for questions before a vote is taken on endorsement.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve as presented today? And please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa?
Hi, this is Eric Barassa with MAPC, and I'm making a motion to approve this amendment as presented today.
Thank you. Tom Bent?
Tom Bent, City of Somerville, second that motion.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded, Jonathan, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Samantha Silverberg,
Yes.
Laura Gilmore,
Yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Brian Kane, yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Eric Diggins, yes.
Tom Kadzis,
Kansas, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
Daniel Amstutz,
Daniel Amstutz, yes.
Todd Corain,
Todd Corain, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Austin Siganowitz,
Austin Saganos, yes.
thank you. Thatcher Keyser,
Thatcher Keyser votes yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn votes yes.
Tina Cassidy,
Tina Cassidy, yes.
Jennifer Constable,
Jennifer Constable, yes.
Peter Pelletier,
Peter Pelletier, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of trucks at the Southampton Street bottleneck. Bill Cutner.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. And hello, my name is Bill Cutner. I'm the Freight Program Manager. And let's see if I can, the study is Trucks. The title of the memo is the study is Trucks at the Southampton Street Bottleneck. So first, why study this location? And why is this important to trucks? Well, let's start now. I'm going to have to get my, oh boy, I need, okay, I want my laser pointer.
Here, Bill, I can do that for you. Just give me one second.
Because you people cannot see my cursor, right?
No, I can see your cursor.
Oh, well, okay. Well, let's get the laser. Okay, there we go. Now yeah. Okay, you see the cursor and the laser pointer, but they aren't.
Now we see the laser pointer, Bill. It's moving.
Okay, and all right. So 4 reasons we're studying this. There are extensive PMP queues that impact all vehicles. Here is okay, let's orient. This is our compass down here. North is this direction. Downtown Boston is up here. And this is the Southeast Expressway. And at this point, you have the Southampton Street on-ramp, and there's a merge, and that merge causes a bottleneck, which is a bottleneck, causes queues. Don't worry, you will see this slide several times in the point of this talk. So I'm just orienting people now. It goes, South Expressway goes further, it reaches Columbia Road, and then the zipper lane. Those are discussed and shown in the report, but they are not shown on any of the graphics on this slideshow. These are actual queue. What you see in yellow are queues we've observed. There'll be more about them later. So the extensive PMP queues impact all vehicles. This is where the study got its name. Then we move, well, why freight? This is a key freight network junction. Now I've talked several times about the National Highway Freight Network and then the critical urban freight corridors, which were approved by the MPO. So the interstate system, here you see in blue, is part of the National Highway Freight Network. And then we, the MPO, designated South Boston Bypass Road and some connecting roads through the waterfront area as critical urban freight corridors. And down here in the study area is where they meet. And then down here off the screen is the bottleneck. This is a very important location for freight. Third, okay, the South Boston Bypass Road, which we showed on the previous slide, the use of the road is under review. That will be discussed. And then finally, point number 4 is the Wedette Circle industrial area. A lot of food, perishable goods coming out of refrigerated warehouses. The businesses might move. It's a cooperative. They might all go together. There'll be a certain number of trucks. How many trucks get generated there? Well, we're going to find out because this is only one way of getting in and out is this road. You count them, then you know. So just to review, these are the 4 points. The PMPQs, where it got this name, it's important for freight. South Boston Bypass Road is being looked at. And also we'd like to know some more about the Wedette Circle. So let's get with the simple findings first. Wedette Circle, between trucks, six or more wheels. You've been on my show yesterday. We go into this in great detail. 412 trucks leave between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And in addition, there are 128 light commercial vehicles. These have 4 wheels, and then they have the name of a business stenciled on the side. So if Wedette Circle ever goes someplace, in toto, this is the kind of impact you would expect from at its new location. And then another finding, which we looked at, I started the field work right before the pandemic lockdowns, and then I finished it up after when the business lockdowns were greatest. And during that time, between when I started the field work and when I ended up, truck traffic went down about 9% because there were some places where I counted, the same place. I do an hour, and then a couple weeks later I do another hour or hour and a half, and I'd add them up and I could compare them. So if it dropped 9% between the beginning and the end of the study, that's sort of an average drop of about 5%, which was close enough for my purposes. I had, before I came to you with findings, I wanted to make sure I was actually counting some useful data. So then we move on. This is the bypass road findings northbound, and it starts out. So currently, use of the northbound in the bypass road in the northbound is unrestricted. During the AM peak hour, you get 450 total vehicles. About 2/3 of those are private autos, completely legal. And of course, the remaining third would be, trucks, light commercial vehicles, and vans and taxis and stuff like that. That's all broken down in the study. And this is well within the road capacity. And MassDOT, they have an ongoing study on to make sure that they're counting the same thing that I'm counting, and they want to be absolutely sure with their ongoing study that things line up. But the plan is to ask that this restriction be lifted indefinitely. They have to go through a regulatory process, which is described in a study. This dates back to the old Central Artery Third Harbor Tunnel project. So those are the northbound findings. Now we move to the southbound, a little more complicated. Now, southbound travel is forbidden to private autos. Now it turns out the authorized vehicles, those would be, trucks, light commercial vehicles, and vans and taxis, which, you get the greatest numbers during the middle of the day. So between 9 and 3, they averaged about 100 an hour. And then you go to the evening rush hour. What happens is the authorized vehicle, and this would be mostly, trucks and light commercial vehicles, tend to go back to their motor pools. They start early. At the end of the day, they're they're calling it quits. But per hour during the PM peak, about 70 unauthorized vehicles, private autos, managed to go, got in there, and I observed some enforcement activity, wrote about it in the report. So why? Let's sort of analyze this a little bit. We do have ambiguous. Oh, okay. Here's now in June, and this is from Google Earth. Could go back and show that a year and a half ago, there's a sign there that says commercial vehicles only, and this is pointing up by South Boston Bypass Road, and this is pointing to Cipher Street, telling people not to turn left unless they're a commercial vehicle, and that's just a couple weeks ago. And look what's missing. So if somebody's on South Boston Bypass Road, they get to this point, there's no sign. Now they go down there, they're in the bypass road, then there's another sign, but this is ambiguous. So if either P and you still have this sign here. So ambiguous signage that just invites, well, we shouldn't be surprised that people don't see signs that don't exist. So okay, here, okay, now we're moving on to the bottleneck. Now, this text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it off the slide. Then we're going to go to our graphic again, and I'll go you through. I'll walk through these things again, but with the graphics, so you don't have to memorize it all immediately. But downstream for that Southampton Street on-ramp, remember, you can get about 7,200 vehicles an hour. Now, this is a planning level analysis. We're just using some numbers that we had at CTPS that we've used. If we ever go and build something, you're going to go and revisit this and do a full traffic study. But based upon the information that we have and the field work we've done, this is sort of a planning level analysis place to start. So downstream from the merge, you can get about 7,200. The problem is more than 7,200 peak hour vehicles are approaching that. Some are on the main barrel of the artery, and some are coming in the surface street. So the ones I highlighted and with the highlighter, don't worry, we'll see that again shortly. The lengthy queues form during the PM peak on both Interstate 93 and the approaching streets. So that's the, if you have a bottleneck, can't get the traffic through, it backs up. And about 100 trucks per hour, and that actually includes light commercial vehicles, enter at Southampton Street during the PM peak. That's 8% of total ramp traffic. Now, at the end of the day, that's actually tapering off. That would tend to be low. So here are, and about 20 of these came from Bypass Road. We actually watch them coming there and turning the corner. That's the number, and that's per hour. Now, here are the implications of this. So truck and light commercial vehicles traffic subsides prior to the PM peak. So they're a minor factor in queue and out. Trucks neither cause the bottleneck, nor many of them, if they're in the bottleneck, they're impacted, but most of them, a lot of trucks have gone back to their motor pool by then, quite sensibly, I will point out. And now, unrestricted southbound travel on the bypass road would significantly increase private auto use. In the evening, if you're in the waterfront and you like to get to Southeast Expressway in the southbound direction, that would be a good place to go. That's why 70 vehicles per hour sort of chance it, or for whatever reason. If you enter the prohibition, you would get more traffic. And then managing those PM peak queues would become more difficult. Now we go back to our favorite. Okay, so here we are. This is South Boston Bypass Road. So right now, private autos are not allowed to come southbound at all. In the evening, a lot more would want to come down this way. They would want to get in here, and they would want to come down, and they would want to, join the bottleneck. So if So let's actually review this. It goes here. There's a signal here that lets people in from the shopping center, from Southampton, and from the frontage road. There's a signal here which lets some people in from Bypass Road, and some people from Widette Circle come like this, and then also lets people in this way, and that's a merge. It backs up to Albany Street, and it goes down. This point, I actually observed a couple years ago. I did a different study. I actually stood there, saw a truck, and said, I'm following you. And I actually walked next to the truck. And that was the end of the queue. And I walked down here, and 20 minutes later, the guy got on. I thanked him for letting me tag along. But if you decided to add green time here to let more cars come down Bypass Road, these queues would lengthen. And this is also quite close. The Mass Ave and Melnia Cass is just down here, not very far away. And not only that, if you had more cars coming down here, some of them, human nature, might block the intersection, or some vehicles want to go and make a right and go someplace over here, either turn down Melnia Cass or go some vehicles that want to go down here and make a right would be backed up waiting for their signal phase. So you're managing. So now we're going to put these into bullets. Okay, so managing the queue system. Without increased Interstate 93 capacity, only the locations of queuing vehicles can be managed. What I was talking about before, you've got signals, cars are waiting, vehicles are waiting, you just got to put them somewhere, and you can sort of manage that. Adding signal time for increased Bypass Road traffic would lengthen the other queue branches. The Massachusetts Avenue connector queue is already too close to Massachusetts Avenue, and queues on limited access highways can better accommodate queuing traffic than city streets. There's 4 lanes, and if it's backing up, you can store vehicles through 4 lanes, whereas you back them up on surface streets, you don't have that same kind of capacity. So if you're going to have if you're stuck with a queue, you'd prefer that the queue be on the limited access highway, on the expressway, than out in the streets, where it can cause lots of problems. So now, how do we shrink the queues? One is on auxiliary lane. Add an auxiliary lane between a 5th lane that would be on the right, that would go from the Southampton Street on-ramp to the Columbia Road off-ramp. It's illustrated in the memo. On this, I simply pointed to it. It's downstream from the merge. And by our planning level analysis, merging capacity at Southampton Street would increase from about 1,250 to 1,450 vehicles per hour in the PM peak, and the mainline queue would lengthen slightly, because you'd have 200 more cars getting on at Southampton, so you have 200 fewer cars on the main barrel. So the mainline queues would get a little longer, but you would pull your surface street queues back away from Mass Ave a little bit. That would actually be good. So you can shrink the queues with or you can shrink the queues by actually widen Interstate 93 and take your 5th lane, not just to Columbia Road, but take it all the way down. And this analysis, there are different ways of building this, but I did this analysis assuming that we just keep the zipper lane, and all you got to do is, if you can get a 5th lane down, so it can be, when you get to the zipper lane adds a 5th, it becomes your 5th lane during the PM peak. And our planning level calculations show that this would increase the merging capacity of Southampton Street from 1,250 to 1,750 vehicles per hour. So you could take 500 more vehicles in, and you could really shorten those queues. And the mainline queue would also shorten, So that's our first pass. So The major conclusions are unrestricted use of bypass road northbound is not a problem. Removing the southbound bypass road restriction on private autos would exacerbate PMQs. Reduced PM peak truck volumes make these vehicles relatively unimportant in queue analysis. And queues in the South Bay area will be a problem until capacity is added to Interstate 93 in some manner. And now, for the third time, I'm open to questions, and we have our favorite graphic here. So that's my summary.
Thank you, Bill. Questions from the members? Brian King.
Thanks, Bill. Just wanted to question one of the findings. You're suggesting that queues will remain until capacity is added on the roadway, but isn't it also true that adding capacity on roadway will just bring more cars to it? So isn't the actual solution having less cars on the road by having more people access these areas through alternative means? Thanks.
Okay. Well, first of all roads are not the same. I mean, you have express highways, and then you have surface roads. And regardless of whether you have a lot of traffic or a medium amount of traffic or less traffic, your motorists, your prefer to use the premium roadways. You want to use the express highway is going to get you where you're going. You don't want to use the surface roads. So what happens is when you get congestion, then some vehicles are tempted to come off of the express highway, because the express highway is becoming parking lot, and use the surface roads. Now, if we were to get like now we have a pandemic, so people, there's less traffic because of conditions we don't like, but let's say we had less traffic because people were finding other ways. Traffic will still want to choose the express highway. The express highways will be the routes of choice. So if you have a reduction in demand, you'll see, and then this will be good, you'll see a lot of thinning, at Mass Ave and Milne. You'll see a lot of thinning in the surface road system, but you will still see a lot of intense demand on your express highway system, and that's actually where you want the demand. Now, if there are bottlenecks on the express highway system, if travel demand subsides, these bottlenecks might be sort of the last things to get cleared up. Now, maybe they're tolerable, but the thinning out of traffic, as if you get less traffic, will be seen. I believe first in the sort of the surface arterials, which are also overburdened. So that's my take on your question.
Thank you. Laura Gilmore.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for this study. This is obviously an area that you and I have talked a lot about, and that is important to freight operations. I would just add that, this is an area that we hear a lot about from the trucking community, and that we've heard in our conversations, at least before the coronavirus. And I don't think from a freight perspective, much has changed there. But that, this is a significant bottleneck that does impact freight movements. And I think it's just important to remind everyone that, the operations in freight work a little differently, where, often the truckers are trying to make multiple runs a day in and out. And so, travel time is a more important factor for them. So, I think this is a lot of helpful information. And, I just wanted to add the context that this is something that we do hear about from the freight community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Brian Kane, do you have another question?
I do. I did want to just second Bill's finding that the signage down by Cypress Street and the access road is very confusing. I used to work in the Seaport, and I've taken the access road before in my personal vehicle because I heard that it was allowable for a short period of time, and that it's not allowable and then it's okay again, and now it's not okay. The signage is static, it never changes. So, you know, if anything comes out of this, improved possible dynamic signage would be something that I think would be very helpful down there.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
James Fitzgerald. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, thanks for this great work. This obviously, I think, as most folks know, the Southampton Onramp has been a difficult area for us for a long, long time. So I just didn't know if you had a chance, Bill, to think about, other than the big, very expensive fix, if there were other kind of smaller fixes that you had a chance to think about, or maybe you could think about in the future, whether it's like the South Bay signal operations, if those things, if that, you know, those operations could get simpler, just other smaller, more shorter term ideas for the Southampton Onramp. Maybe you haven't had a chance to look into that.
Well, there's thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. And there's big and super big. You know, I mean, I did the quote. My version, Matt's moving, 17,000 in the previous, we voted to move 17,000. Well, I'm looking at moving 1.7 billion. Okay. for the idea of the full expansion down to Savin Hill. I've written about that. However, I always, when I looked at my huge project, the auxiliary lane between Southampton and Columbia was always seen as an ancillary early action item, which would have some, but even that is, so that we have super big and merely big. And I know that the auxiliary lane, I know that the city of Boston and MassDOT have both been intrigued with that. That's it is something, it's an idea that people like, and it's, but it's not free. I mean, it still costs a slug of money, and I think it can be done within the right of ways, but it requires rebuilding all the bridges. So there, let me leave it at that. But you were asking about TSM solutions. Is there some way? So as I said, if you don't add the capacity and you're managing the queue, I mean, and the queues may shrink. We don't know what the new normal is going to be, and of course the new normal could also be growth. So we don't know. But if you don't add capacity, whatever level of queues you have, all you can do is manage them. And are there better ways of managing them? And I don't know, because when I was out there, as counting, I would also look and I say, did the traffic, in my estimation, did the traffic engineers do anything wrong on the timing of the signal? And nothing jumped out at me. I didn't see anything like, oh boy, I gotta phone up Neil and tell him this. I didn't see, except for the sign, except for the missing sign. I didn't see anything. But some of these things are like deal breakers. Like whatever you do, you gotta keep the queue from reaching Melnia Cass Boulevard. That's it. So whatever you do, I mean, some of these things are absolutely critical to don't block some of these key intersections. So you may, so you may end up tolerating queues or whatever on South Boston Bypass Road, rather than running the risk of having the queue back up to Melnia Cass. So but I'm receptive to suggestions. None jumped to mind. Oh, and repurposing Pet Circle to higher and better use is not going to make things better. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay.
Excellent presentation as always.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Next item on the agenda is member items. Lynn?
I'm sorry to do this, but it's a short meeting, and I was a little caught off guard by the question earlier about the selection. So, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? It's just got a general process question regarding the selection of projects. Thanks. So I had noticed in the sub-regional one, one of the ways that projects was selected was that locations with projects that are currently under construction, in design, under study, or program and tip were excluded from further consideration. So I'm pretty sure I understand the rationale for that. It's kind of to make sure that the sub-regions are getting a distribution of the research. But is location actually a sub-region, or is it a location in a sub-region? So could a particular sub-region have more than one corridor study because, well, it's a big enough region that you could have different locations within that sub-region?
So Lynn, I'll try to answer this, and then if I misstate, staff will jump in. I think the actual issue is we don't want to study solving a problem that's already being planned to be solved. So if there is work going, if there's a project in the tip to fix, as an example, Route 9 in Framingham, we don't want to do a planning study to look at the corridor of Route 9 in Framingham because there's already a project that's going to quote unquote fix it. So I think it's really not so much about making sure that subregions each get a turn as it is making sure you don't waste effort and time and resources studying something that is already being addressed elsewhere.
Okay, thanks. So my assumption was wrong. I appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Lynn. Laura?
Hi there. I just wanted to bring one thing up, which is that I am actually going to be stepping off of the board. I am going to be leaving my position at Massport and going to work over at the Volpe Center starting next month. So I just wanted to let everyone know that there is going to be a different representative from Massport who will start joining in January, and we'll be working with CTPS on the paperwork for that. But I just wanted to say that I have loved working with you all and serving on this board in this capacity, and I will pass along my new contact information to keep in touch with everyone.
Thank you, Laura. We're really going to miss you. Good luck at Volpe. I hope you enjoy your new job there. But it's too bad for our purposes. I'm sure not for yours.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'll be continuing in some similar work that's related to everything we talk about here. So I'm hoping to keep in touch with everyone.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Volpe's gains are lost. Others? Seeing none.
We actually have a question from Ken Miller.
Oh, Ken, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand raised.
No, it wasn't a question. Just wanted I wasn't aware, but Laura, welcome to the federal government.
That's very nice of you, Ken. Any other items or concerns? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to adjourn, and please state your name for the record when you make the motion? Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Lynn Diggins.
And I merrily seconded.
Thank you very much. Without objection, we are adjourned. Everybody have a great couple of weeks. We'll see you soon. Bye, guys.